I am
We will move on to question number 2, and we will begin with Sora Leary for this question. As New York State Director, how will you ensure that there is balanced support for both undergraduate and graduate chapters?
As New York State Director, making sure that there is balanced support for undergraduate and graduate chapters, that is a key question because I recognize that the support sometimes seems unbalanced. I recognize the hard work of our undergraduate advisors and the chapters who sponsor these undergraduate chapters. It is important that if you are in a geographic area or an area where you know there is a campus and there are Zetas on that campus, even though you are a chapter that might not have an undergraduate chapter underneath you, it is important to support the undergraduate chapter in your area. Collaborate. Make sure that you're communicating with the graduate chapter whose responsibility it is. And I will encourage other chapters to make sure that they communicate with the chapters and with the undergraduates to create community. And it already has been happening. We also want to make sure that the equity of assistance, specifically with financial assistance, our undergraduates need just a little bit more. They need a little bit more reminding. They need a lot more encouragement because they're so inundated with their academic achievements. So we want to make sure that equality happens at our undergraduate level, and then to make sure that our graduate chapters from all across the state have the opportunity for equal involvement, equal representation, equal officers, equal appointed officers as well. And that's part of my platform to make sure that I have representation in New York State from everywhere and not just focused on one specific area. So I look forward to making sure that our sorors from the north, and all the way out to Long Island are represented on my board. Thank you.
Thank you, Sora Leary. Next, we have Sora Morrison Roper, and I will repeat the question for you. As New York State Director, how will you ensure that there is balanced support for both undergraduate and graduate chapters?
Thank you so much for that question. And, I definitely have a lot speaking to this in my platform. I'm very passionate about undergraduates. I also came in as an undergraduate myself at Stony Brook University, and I've served as the downstate undergraduate coordinator a few years back. So I think it's really important that we're having intentional undergraduate engagement. So that's one, right? So what does it look like for us to host 2 undergraduate forums each year? We need to make sure that we're opening up as many channels as possible to get undergraduate feedback. We need to be listening for trends, concerns, and emerging needs because what they have going on right now is super unique to them, right? We have to prioritize quality engagement over constant activity. There's a lot going on for undergraduates, and sometimes we forget that they're basically operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when we do get an opportunity to engage with them, it needs to be very targeted and very focused. We want to strengthen connection, but we don't want to be overwhelming. And then we may need to focus on relevant leadership and development for today's undergraduates. Now, we all are completely aware that there's something like 500,000 Black and Brown women who have already lost jobs in the country at this time. We have to make sure that our undergraduates are prepared to get out there right now. And so it's our job to make sure that we're preparing them that way. So, what does it look like for us to create training programs that are real world, not just what's going to impact their Zeta career, but what's going to happen and make them competitive towards their other counterparts? AI training, salary negotiation training opportunities, project management skills, right? And we want to connect undergraduates to graduate sorors so they can help with mentorship or referrals, references, and job opportunities. We need to make sure we're also focusing on retention, belonging, and sustainability so that when sorors are ready to graduate, we have a soft space for them to land. And we have to be very intentional about doing so. Visibility, amplification, super important, not just about intake, but all the wins.
Thank you, Sora Morrison Roper. So, De Leon, you are up next, and I will repeat the question for you. As New York State Director, how will you ensure that there is balanced support for both undergraduate and graduate chapters?
Thank you. So first thing that has to happen is it has to be intentional. I can say with the recent reactivation of Omicron Beta at both LIU and Medgar Evers, it's been important to have a team. It's been important to have a task force that was very intentional in terms of the work, very intentional in terms of the service. And also we had to work on building relationships with those schools as well. One of the things that's been very important is to make sure that those undergraduate members were also seen and heard in the graduate chapter. So sometimes one of the things that we've had happen is that we've had those members come to the chapter meeting and share their thoughts, share their experiences, share what they've been going through. Another important thing that has to be thought about with intention is building the bridge and the gap between SOARs transitioning from undergrad to graduate. And I also have this in my platform. And the name of that is the Bridge of Pearls. And that's because sometimes there's that awkward space where SOARs are leaving undergraduate chapters and then going to grad chapters and feeling unsupported. But imagine the space that they can build together if they're not seen as just women who are transitioning from undergraduates, but women who are actually building a coalition to bridge both the graduate chapters and the undergraduate chapters. So their role needs to shift from transitioning members to bridge builders. That's something that's also done with intention and something that we've been working on with our undergraduates as well. So calling them bridge builders, transition ambassadors, making sure that the SOARs lead transition workshops, making sure that they co-design programming, and making sure that they have mentors on the graduate level who can identify the things and the steps that they'll need as they make this transition. So you really have to have people, boots on the ground, SOARs on the ground, who are working in both spaces, SOARs who are willing to show up on the campuses, and then making sure that the doors of the graduate chapters are also open to the undergraduates because it's an exchange. We learn from them, we teach them, and they learn from us and they teach us. So that is what's important about making sure that they've seen, heard, and that their experience is also relevant on both ends. Thank you.
Thank you, Sora De Leon. Sora Faber, you are up next, and I will repeat the question for you. As New York State Director, how will you ensure that there is balanced support for both undergraduate and graduate chapters?
Thank you for the question. So we know that the needs for undergraduates are a little bit different than the needs of graduates. One, there's the financial divide, right? So most of our graduate SOARs are working and the undergraduate SOARs are not yet in their fields. So the support is multifaceted. One, the financial support so that they can show up and attend conferences and have that presence, because the pricing for a lot of these conferences are not very different for undergraduates versus graduates. So creating more pipelines like what we did for the Atlantic Regional Conference, as well as mini grants for program initiatives to allow undergraduates to be able to attend and learn about Zeta without having to go into debt, right, to do that because they don't have the same financial resources. Also creating mentorship opportunities for their career paths. This can be where our life members support our undergraduates or just experienced members that are already on a graduate level that can kind of mentor these young ladies that are moving into their future careers and tell them where to go. What do you want to do? Okay, this is the best practice in order to do that, because that hand-holding can be very important when navigating different career fields. Also meeting undergraduates where they are. Different generations don't communicate the same. So we may say, I sent you an email, and they're like, I don't check email. You need to communicate with me the way that I want to be communicated with. So meeting them where they are and then bridging that gap between how they currently communicate as undergraduates and what they may see when they become graduate members. I've also mentioned in my opening statement, junior board opportunities. The way that undergraduates operate on a local level on campuses is different, and it's based on the necessities on that campus. And that transition into that graduate space needs some nurturing. So being able to serve in junior board capacity so that they can learn how graduate chapters operate will be more of an incentive for them to move into those graduate spaces. And then
Thank you, Sora Faber.